Good evening, and welcome to day two of a third edition of the Globant AgileNXT 2021, a premier Agile delivery web conference. After yesterday's fantastic and engaging talks, we continue with the same zeal. We begin day two with a panel discussion, Agile Transformation Leveraged for Business Agility, moderated by Nilesh Pawnikar from Globant. This panel consists of industry stalwarts like Ashutosh, Visu, and Nagini. Welcome all.
Hello everyone and a very on Agile Transformation Leveraged for Business Agility. Today, in the complex world which is full of volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity, it is very important for every business to be agile to succeed in delivering continuous value to their customers. As agilists and business leaders, each one of us faces the continuous challenge on how we contribute to this journey of agile transformation of our own organizations and our customers. And all the more importantly, how do we keep our businesses agile? Folks, this is Nilesh Pavnikar here, your host tonight, and I'm deeply honored to host our distinguished panelists today who are well-known thought leaders in the field of agile. So I would like to welcome Ashutosh Matavdekar, Vishukumar Gopal, and Nagini Chandramouli to this discussion, and I invite them to introduce themselves and talk about their work in the field of agile. So probably we'll get started with Ashutosh first.
Hi everyone. So first of all, thanks Nilesh and Globant for giving me this opportunity, and thanks for having such a wonderful co-panelist with me on this discussion. My name is Ashutosh Bhattodekar. I have around 22 years of experience in the software industry, and a very interesting bit of experience. I would say first 10 years in a traditional way of working. Started as a developer, then became a project manager, a program manager, and then into the traditional PMO, and then suddenly the switch of gears happened into the agile world, and since last 13 years I have an experience in the agile way of working, leading transformations, right from playing a role of a scrum master, agile coach, and an enterprise agile coach. Yeah, and thanks once again for the opportunity.
Thanks, Ashutosh. We'll move on to Vishukumar.
Yeah, thanks, Nilesh. And thanks to the Globant team for giving this opportunity. And today, this session is going to inspire many people because the heavy panelists which are with us today to enlighten you. Our life itself having a lot of transformation. So my career started with an entrepreneur. Like it's not a bigger entrepreneur. Like with the chart corner, I started the business. Then moved to the vehicle finance business. Then moved to the browsing center, and then I got into the corporate world with the project management area, and slowly got moved into the management side on the strategy and transformation areas. As part of that, agile and lean need to be introduced to the people in the early stage of like 2005 6 times. So that really helped me to learn as a first hand, and then implement and also help the people to get transformed in that. In last 15 years, how this lean and agile combination got transformed, and today in this pandemic situation, how it transformed to many businesses, not even big businesses. It's for the small and medium businesses also. It really helped. So we will share those thoughts with all of you. It will help for your career and for your organization. So again, thanks for the opportunity. Look forward the great panel discussion with all of you.
Thank you, Vishu. Over to you, Nagini.
Okay, thanks Nilesh, and good morning to Vishu and Ashutosh. Privileged to have you as the co-panelist in this discussion today. My career started 25 years ago, and I have also covered most of the team roles when I have started the career, from the web designing till the enterprise agile coach today. I have also been a very big advocate of project management for few years in my career before the agile journey started. So my agile journey is also 11 years old right now, and I have also gone through all the roles like Scrum Master, be it an RTE or Kanban board owner or something like that. We are. I had the privilege to start these initiatives in some of the organizations even before the agile transformation as such was coined and implemented.
Okay.
So the first touch for me in the name of agile was the manifesto. When in one of the project management conferences, when a person from US has come in and he was discussing about this manifesto and other stuff, I was like curious, and I asked him for a copy of that. So there was
Hmm.
nothing like a software copy or soft copy at that time. So he just I was privileged to get a hard copy from him on the values and principles of agile. There was nothing more than that which I got the first taste of agile. So even before I understood any of the frameworks, I was only understanding the values and principles, and that is where it is so imbibed in the way I work today that whichever kind of framework or technology or domain you are going into, you already go with that mindset, and that changes a lot of perception about where you are working. And for me, that has helped a lot to reach where I am today. And this is going to be some of the inputs which I would be sharing in today's topics about how we have to handle the agile transformations and most of the topics which we are going to discuss today. And thank you for
Great.
the opportunity from Globant. And Nilesh, you are a great host. Thank you.
Thanks, Nagini. Thanks for the introduction to all three of you. It was a great one. So, without any further ado, I think let's dive straight into the discussion. And to start with, my first question is for Ashutosh here. So, Ashutosh, how would you define business agility, and why is it important for any organization to succeed?
Okay, thanks, Nilesh. So I consider business agility as something. I mean, if I were to put it in a very very simplistic manner, the money which I'm investing, what are the returns I'm getting? Any enterprise or a business, right? When they invest in some enterprise, right, or when they invest in some opportunity, they're always going to look for some returns out of it. So that is the inward facing definition of business agility, what I say. So let's say as an organization, I mean, I have decided to transform my team from a traditional way of working into an agile way of working. So definitely there's a
Hmm.
huge investment. We all know that agile transformations are not cheap, right? And when I say investment, it's
Right.
not in terms of dollar only, what I'm meaning. It's also the time, it's also the mindset change that requires a huge amount of emotional investment also. So from that perspective, I would say that whatever I'm investing, am I getting a return out of it? This is more like an inward facing definition of a business agility. Outward
Hmm.
facing definition, as we all know, we live in a VUCA world. We have enterprises which are challenged by a lot of disruptions. You suddenly find a competitor who comes in and who throws you out of the business. So outward facing definition of business agility as per me would be that how quickly the enterprise responds to these dynamic forces, be it VUCA or be it any of these other, I would say, disruptors which are trying to disrupt us. How quickly, as an enterprise, we adapt to it and we come out of that situation. So tomorrow, today it is Big Basket which is threatening my store. Tomorrow, as a Big Basket, I could be threatened by, let's say, Dunzo. So we don't know, right? I mean, these are the
Right.
disruptions which happen to us. So I would say it's a definition which is both inwards as well as outwards.
Okay. Thanks, Ashutosh, for that thought. Vishu, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah. Apart from that internal external factor, I feel the people who got involved, they should have the resilient mindset, because fixed to growth we are able to transform, but the resilient is when the problem happens in this VUCA world. Some people are really getting totally disappointed. They are not able to cope up and come back, and some of the businesses also stumbling and they are not able to come back. And
Right.
in this pandemic, we saw a lot of people who are already in the path of agile transformation, but their business agility was not so good. They got failed.
Mhm.
So that resilience is very important, and the resilient mindset need to be practiced, and the people should move towards to the resilient. Then only the business agility will be happen. Otherwise, agile transformation be in the organization level, but business agility may not happen.
Great. So just to summarize a few points from this, we are talking about the inward and outward definition. We are talking about the business resiliency. We are talking about the investment on returns, the cost it takes, not only in terms of dollar value, but in time, in the mindset change. And we are also talking about the pandemic and how business agility is important in these times, right? Okay, fantastic, guys. So, taking it further, my next question is to Nagini. So, Nagini, what does agile transformation mean to any organization in terms of delivering value?
Thank you for that wonderful question, Nilesh. For me, before even jumping into the delivering value, as the Vishu and Ashutosh have just mentioned, for any agile transformation, what we have to understand is it has to help an organization actually to be able to pivot the unpredictable, taking the advantage of the unpredictable markets, as these two people have already said, that the customer demands, and the most important is that real world challenges like the pandemic which we have seen recently. you know we may have a lot of theories in place when the transformation was planned, but if you don't have a resilience, as Vishu was saying, or a backup plan, or a foundation which is so strong that it will not either because of these challenges, the organizations may not succeed in their agile transformation. And if we have a strong agile transformation in place and keeping these three factors like the unpredictable markets, customer demands changing, and the real world scenarios which may throw challenges at any given point of time at any degree, we don't even foresee that, right? For example, we know
Yeah,
some of the things like the cyclones or are natural disasters that are okay because they are for a shorter time and the impact may be different in different scenarios. But this pandemic has given you a lot of learning, even for the people who have been very very consistent in their transformations. And
hmm,
unless they had that resilience in place, they have not gone forward, they have stopped there, because the moment they hit the this scenario, they were not having any clue of what was happening. So for me, an agile transformation, if you have to have a delivery pipeline in place, or if you have to see the agile transformation delivering value, you have to understand what are the exact pipelines you are working on, what are the focus areas you are trying to put in place in the first few years of the transformation, so that that resilience or that kind of backup is built within it. Every team which is working
hmm,
in a BU business unit has to really understand their goals, and they have to understand the goals of the business unit and try to deliver that sprint on sprint and PI on PI. In that scenario, once every unit is having these kind of teams in place, what happens to us
right.
is like it goes across the organization, and without even giving any effort to what we are delivering, you always deliver value, because you know what are the goals of your business unit, as well as you know what is across the organization, you know the dependencies, you know everything clearly. So these are the two folds for me, and for that we need to have invested or realigned our operational legacy operational structures, as well as the non-agile ways of working has to slowly come down in the support teams or anything which are all related to this agile transformation, right?
Right.
Um, so That's what I think about delivering value.
Yeah. So, Nagini, when you mentioned that probably we have to look at our structures also, could you explain that a little bit in deep?
So if you are taking a very simple example of your performance appraisal system, for example,
Hmm.
when you are working in a waterfall or the traditional ways of working, every individual were given rewarded for their performance. But when you are trying to transform, it is a team structure which has to be rewarded, or it has
Right.
to be as a team reward which has to transform into performance appraisals. So these are the things which have to be in the back end to be changed. Some one the example I can give you is the procurement process. A lot of
Hmm.
companies have a different procurement process for every resource they have, not about the
Right.
human resource, but procuring the software, procuring the hardware. They have their own sweet time and approval systems. But if you are transforming a company, these are all going to happen for every new project which is coming in. So how are you going to align your systems with the procurement process?
Hmm.
If the procurement process is having its own sweet deadlines and approval systems, your project and the team cannot wait for those approvals to fall in place and all the things to be set up for the teams to follow. The dynamism or the agility you are looking forward from the teams will not be sufficed if you have these kind of limitations. So you have
Right.
to again change that kind of a support system also. Another example which I was mentioning about.
Yeah.
So the legacy systems have to slowly become agile.
Okay. Thanks, Nagini. Since this is a very important question, and so I would probably pass it on to Ashutosh and Vishu also to share their thoughts on this.
Yes,
Ash-
actually, she rightly mentioned that the enabling functions also need to be get transformed. Uh, so we need to have a very organization fully to understand the constancy of purpose. Then only we can move in a unified direction. Otherwise, you can have the framework, you can have the tools and technologies, everything. But this enabling functions should understand they also need to get transformed. It is nothing related to only with the delivering the project or product. Most of the time, they think agile means it is for the people who are in the delivery, it's
Mhm.
not for the other functions. So it
That's
has to
right.
be happen in the enterprise level. Then only this agile transformation can contribute to the business agility. Otherwise, this
Right.
people in the project or product development, they will get stuck when any disturbance happens from the external or any structural changes happen internally. So it should be in a
Right.
very holistic approach, and the values and principles are very important. On top of that, only you can have the frameworks, tools, and technologies. Without that foundation, you agile transformation may not be successful. That is my
Right.
point, Nilesh.
Very rightly said, and I think what we are trying to say here is it's not only about the teams who are working on projects and products, right? As a software development team, but it is from, let's say, right from the CEO or the board to the bottommost level of the organization, which includes all the different various functions, right? When we talk about agile transformation, it's the transforming the entire organization, not just the delivery part of it. Very rightly said, gentlemen.
Yeah.
But
So,
actually, agile transformation is not
yeah.
only about transforming something; it is transforming changing the DNA itself, the kind
Right.
of mindset or the culture, what you call in other words, the DNA of the organization. It's leadership is the core part of your organization. So the exact change has to happen in the core DNA of the organization itself. And whenever you are planning for an agile transformation, just ask this one question, like what are the business goals that you want to achieve from this agile transformation? If that is clear from top to bottom, your business agility is already in place because you know what is the core value you are trying to achieve from there, right? So with that,
Hmm.
half of your journey is already successful. Everybody has the same clarity from top to bottom about what are the business goals you are trying to achieve or succeed using agile transformation, that is half journey successful already.
Right.
So
Thanks,
these two
Nagini.
are very important. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think now we have a good definition on what we do mean by business agility and what we mean by agile transformation also, right? Now let's try to link both of them and see how agile transformation can be leveraged to gain business agility. Ashutosh, if we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nilesh. Yeah, now I'll take up some of the pointers which my two co-panelists mentioned. Yeah, I mean, one challenge which we see is that as with what was discussed earlier, right? Moment we talk about agile transformation, we think only in terms of IT teams, or we think only in terms of, let us say, operations team. And then we have this a term which is called as DevOps, and we think that our agile transformation is plateaued out there. But when we talk about agile transformation and more in terms of business agility, I would like to define business agility, and this is also something which resonated
Mhm.
earlier in the discussions. It is not just restricted to agile transformation. It is actually, if you ask me, it is a leadership transformation. What Nagini was mentioning, the entire DNA. It is also one part of that is agile transformation. So when I say business agility, or my organization agile from the point of view of business, agile transformation, as per
Mhm.
me, is just one part of the equation. There are other two components which make up that equation. One is the leadership agility, or the leadership DNA, as what was told earlier. And the second part is also the process agility, which also came out in the earlier discussion about procurement, or about HR or finance being more agile. Right now,
Mhm.
all these three equations together have to be, all these three pieces have to be together tied up in order to get business agility. And something similar experiences even I went through in one of the engagements, where as a part of the PI planning, the team committed to an item, and suddenly in the middle of the PI they realized that yes, this item requires a hardware which of course was imported from abroad, but it was lying at a customs office in India. And when we went to
Mhm.
the customs office, they said your organization has not done the necessary paperwork. The fault was clearly with our organization, who had not done the necessary paperwork to get it released. And when we contacted our procurement head, this person said, no, but I never thought that it was such an urgent thing, right? I mean, that sharing of that
Right.
objective. I mean, here it was clearly case of a PI objective, which one of the critical stakeholders was not aware of. So, I mean, it's a business agility. When we talk about, we have to make sure that the entire ecosystem of the organization is aware about the goals. And of course, we all know that one way of doing this is through OKRs, objectives and key results. And coming back to that engagement which I was talking about, next time onwards, we made sure that one person from the procurement team is a part of the PI planning meeting, as at least as an observer, because this was for a home automation system where there was a lot of hardware which had to be imported, where there were a lot of firmware, softwares, etc. And we said that it's better that you at least start attending for half an hour, 45 minutes. And also, we told the team also that any external commitments, they have to be informed to the stakeholders immediately after the meeting. So coming back to that question, that what exactly are those levers, right? What how can agile
Mhm.
transformation be levered to gain business agility? If you ask me,
Right.
involving identifying the right set of stakeholders, involving them right from the beginning, and making sure we have this expectation set with them. Right. I mean, yes, we can have a Kanban board created for HR and all, but then again, that would be a tool level implementation. Again, what is important here is that the leadership of these teams also recognizes the fact that it is contributing to the business, and if we don't do our work, it is going to impact the business in one way or the other. So I would say that those are the two other dimensions. So when I say agile transformation, I was meaning the team level or the technical agility, or if I go purely by safe, team and technical agility. But there is more to that, leadership agility as well as process agility. And by process, I mean the business process agility.
That's correct.
Very well said, Ashutosh. I think all of us do agree to all the points that you have raised. All the three areas, whether the people, process, and the leadership, etc., are very well important, right? And then it does not impact the business. depend on what framework you are following and the example that you gave, right?
Mhm.
You have to involve
Mhm.
even people from procurement to in order to achieve your business objective. If they are not aware, even
Correct.
the other teams being agile won't take you far long, right? So thanks,
True, true.
Ashutosh, on that. Vishu, I would like to hear, yeah, Vishu, I would like to hear you also on this particular topic.
Yes. See, the way the bigger organizations adopted this agile transformation because of their customer asked them to follow certain agile practices, they done that. I'm looking more the mid-sized organizations and the small and the startup. They also want to follow the agile practices and they want to do the agile transformation, but they are not understanding the fundamentals of agile transformation. So they are getting confused between the business agility and the agile transformation. So they are in the
I
growth path
think
or they
we
are in the
lost Vishu.
scaling.
No worries. Nagini, would you like to
We
share your
can we
thoughts on
can
this topic?
actually hear him. We
Actually,
can
we
hear
can
him.
hear Vishu.
And
Vishu, we are able to hear. Oh, now we lost him.
yeah, no, no, I am there.
Okay.
I'm
Oh,
he's
yeah,
there.
yeah. We were able to hear. Yeah, yeah. We were able
Please
to hear Vishu.
continue,
Yeah, go ahead,
Vishu.
Okay.
Vishu.
Sorry.
Okay, no
Sorry
problem.
about that. Vishu,
So,
please continue.
yeah. Yeah, that startup and the small entrepreneurs and the mid-sized organizations, they are not understanding the difference between the business agility and the agile transformation.
Absolutely.
That's the confusion they have, and either they are not fully focused in the agile transformation, they are not fully focused on the business agility. In that
Right.
one, in the market competition, in the rat race, they are losing their business also. If you look at many startups got failed because of this one, so they immediately thinking digital transformation is part of the agile transformation, people transformation is part of agile, so they are not able to do it in 360-degree. They are taking any one part of that and they are more focusing one area. When the problem
Mhm.
occurs in another area, they are not really able to balance it. So 85% of the startup is getting failed because of that. And the smaller organizations, further investment is required. They are also struggling. The medium organizations are realizing it and they are doing more the second level leadership development, and they are engaging coaches like me in the consulting and coaching these people on the leadership side. Uh, but the
Mhm.
bigger organizations, they have a internal people who can do this agile transformation contributions to the business agility. That part is really happening. Very few organizations successful. In some of the organizations, it is not happening yet, that because of the mindset issue or the DNA not has changed. So those who realize such factors able to be very successful, and this agile transformation is really contributing to the business agility. Otherwise, if the understandings are not clear, if the people think it is only for following the agile rituals, most of the places I
Mhm.
have seen, it's a rituals. They immediately thinking that they have transformed to the agile. So the way how I see people should be more adaptive, more global thinking, and more innovative, and they need to have the servant leadership and entrepreneurial thinking. If you look at agile, A for adaptive, G for global. So that is the way people need to understand this one, so that they can be able to contribute towards to the business agility.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Yeah.
These are my points,
Thanks.
Nilesh.
Thanks. Yeah, very well said, Vishu. I think we are trying to bring it up overall as a 360 approach, right? And we are trying to bring it up from levels of organization to types of organizations as well, right? Whether it be a startup, a mid-sized organization, or a big organization, everyone needs to focus on this in their own areas, right? Nagini, would you also like to share your thoughts on this?
So, as Ashutosh and Vishu already has given a clear idea of about the agile transformation and the linkage between the business agility and agile transformation, only one thought I wanted to leave at this point is agile transformation is not an end state, right? Agile transformation is a journey, and you don't have a clear, finish line. This keeps evolving as the business dynamics change, as the markets change, as the customer needs change. So that has to be understood properly by the organizations. Like, it's not a 4-year journey, it's not a 2-year journey or something like that. That has to be a constant budgeting system for agile transformation. It is not that after 3 years I'll take back all the funds I have put for my agile transformation. It won't happen like that. Instead, organizations have to think of this, what I would say is small funding. You can take your funds in small pockets at regular intervals, try that, and just keep it live. Because
Right.
creation of resources, creation of the organization design, realignment of your operational legacy operational structures, everything is just a starting point for me. Creation is not the
Right.
only thing which the agile transformation has to do for you. Because if you are looking at an agile transformation, there are a lot of friction points today for me as a first implementer in the organization. The first team may have different friction points, but when you are going through that journey and some other teams are joining in, you may have different friction points after a year from now, because of the scaling, because of the way you are trying to integrate it with the operating teams, operational teams, and other supporting teams. So that actually has to be imbibed in the leadership mind, that agile transformation is not the end state. It is
Right.
just the thing has to
It's a
be
journey, I would
an
say, not a
active thing.
destination, right?
It has to be the lifeline, like an active lifeline. The
Yeah.
moment you open the stop the ventilator of a critical patient, what happens is you don't have life after that. The same thing
Right.
has to be, that is my analogy to an organization agile transformation. The moment you plug off your live wires, the transformation dies there. It's
Right.
that
Right.
critical for me.
Right. I think nothing better can be said about the criticality of agility and the transformation, agile transformation to the success of an organization. I think very well said, Nagini. So probably moving on, let's talk about the frameworks that are available for this kind of a disruption today. And as agilists, how do we, or as organizations, how do we choose between them? So probably if Vishu, you can share your thoughts around this.
Yeah. So before Agile, we started with the lean. Okay. So we introduced the lean to our organization, and then we mixed the Agile and lean, and Agile lean kind of we done that. So after moving out from the corporate, and now
Hmm.
I'm doing with the consulting with the many organizations, what I realized is you cannot suggest the framework which works for somebody to the similar kind of organization which is also in the same kind of business. So we need to find out what works for you. So the PMI is recent days
Hmm.
promoting a lot about the wow, its way of working. Okay, the disciplined agile is talking more about wow, way of working. It may be lean for you, it may be agile for you, it may be agile lean for you. In that also, are you going to do it
Vishu, we lost you.
I think we lost Vishu.
so when
Yeah, I
we
think we
when
lost him.
we practice?
Yep.
No, I'm there. When we practice any one of that, so maybe within the organization itself, for BFSI something will be works, for healthcare
Good, good.
something works, for manufacturing something works. So in within the enterprise also, you cannot have a one single framework which can be
Exactly.
practiced across the organization. So we need to be very choosy, specific about selecting the framework which depends upon the customer needs, as well as the value which is going to create for organization and the people who got involved, as well as the customer who are going to receive it. That's how I will see while picking up the framework. And today there are a lot of competition between many frameworks also. And when we talk about any one of the framework, the other people will say, hey, why don't you promote ours? So why are you promoting only that? So that kind of things also happening in the market. So so we need to be
Right.
very cautious about that point also. Let's The team has to decide, like whoever running this agile practices in the organization, they can do pilot in certain areas with the different frameworks, and which works
Hmm.
for them, and they need to practice it in a bigger level. So instead of getting licenses of any frameworks or anything, so let them do some pilot and see which works for them. As you rightly mentioned, it's a journey. So in this journey, we need to do some trial and error also. And Nagini also mentioned about that people should not think it is a one-time activity. So once we are moving from this state to that state, we are done. It's nothing like that. So Ashutosh
Right.
also mentioned earlier that we need to have that end point. That may be ideal state, but the moment you reach that ideal state, make that one as a future state. And
Exactly.
your whatever the future state you achieved, make it as a current state. So you need to do this continuous improvement. Then only this agile transformation can be live, and you can be have that successful journey in the transformation.
Yep.
Absolutely.
These are my points, Nilesh.
Yeah, thanks, Vishu. And I think it's very enlightening because nowadays what we see is there are so many frameworks available, and usually people do start with whatever somebody else is following. So let's say if I'm working in a BU in an organization, my BU, some other projects are following safe. So if I'm getting a new contract, I immediately ask the team to start working on safe without even analyzing whether it is the right framework for me in that particular situation. So I think very well said. The team and the leadership, I think they have to get involved, understand what is the actual value that the customer is asking for, and then probably decide upon the framework. And not only decide, do a pilot, as very well said by Vishu. I think doing a pilot and probably, if required, changing the framework. All that is all about agile, right? So if we just choose some framework on day one and we continue it for years and years together without it delivering value to the customer, then I don't think we are following agile, right? So very well said, Vishu, on that. Ashutosh, I would also like to hear from you on this particular topic.
Yeah, in fact, I agree with what Vishu was telling. Like, I mean, if I say any framework, obviously people will say, "Why didn't you talk about the other framework?" But yeah, and also I agree with the fact that I mean, I'd like to add, take it a little forward. What Vishu said, even within the two transformations within the same domain. Let's take BFSI, or for that matter, media or telecom. I have seen what works for one organization does not directly, it's not a lift and shift. I can straight away apply those business agility measures in that transformation. I mean, I have experienced this. This person said, no, but I mean, how did you even think that it will be a lift and shift? I mean, yes, I mean, I'm giving an
Right.
example of two very close competitors. I can't name them here, obviously. But he said, no, but their business is different. Our business is different. Our core customers are from this segment. There is 70% of the customers are from a totally different segment. So obviously,
Hmm.
it's not a lift and shift again within the same domain is what I have experienced. And yeah, I mean, I'm taking this name with a pinch of salt. I mean, I'm sure the participants will take the meaning out of it. Yes, there are different frameworks. But I mean, if you ask me, I'm sure even our co-panelists know about it. Scrum.org has come out with a evidence-based management guide. Now, again, when
Hmm.
I'm talking about that, I'm not saying that you do a direct lift and shift from there. It is like a guide which has been given to you. We as agilists, we as agile coach and change agents will have to pick. Okay, it is just a kind of a light. It is like a map before Google Map existed. If you ask me, it will tell you that there's a jungle. It will tell you that there's a river. But actually, what is the situation? Only when you start traveling in that area, you will come to know. So you'll have to explore. I mean, again, the example which I'm giving today, it has become easier because of Google Maps. But imagine 10 years,
Hmm.
15 years back when we just had a physical map and we had to locate a place, right, in a jungle. So I would say that
Right.
guide has to be looked from that aspect, that it is just giving you some kind of a pointers that, okay, Okay, this could be some of the measures by which you can measure the business agility of an organization. So they talk about they don't even talk about some operational metrics like velocity and all. They talk about the revenue per feature. They talk about how many defects are there in release frequency. I mean, those are the metrics which they talk about. So a little affinity towards that, I would say, but again with a pinch of salt that don't directly do a lift and shift again. And why I'm repeating is people should not take any other meaning out of it. I think that's a good framework which has come out. And as Vishu also mentioned, a lot of other organizations, even with whether it is PMI or whether it is scaled agile, they do talk about some of these metrics. But again, my 2 cents on this would be that a lift and shift doesn't work. Even as a coach, if you have implemented or if you have helped a team derive some matrix, you cannot
Mhm.
directly lift and shift even within the same industry, I would say.
I think, yeah, that's a very valid perspective, Ashutosh, that you are sharing. Lift and shift does not work because the situation changes. And as you gave the example of
Mm,
traveling in a jungle, finding out a river without Google Maps, right? So how can you know what is going to happen next, right? So I think, yeah, I
mm.
concur with that idea. Okay, cool. So moving on, Nagini, I would like to ask you, since you are very closely working with large organizations on digital transformation and business agility, what are the challenges organizations are facing while they are going through this transformation, and what kind of challenges that agilists are seeing or coaches like you guys are seeing on the ground working in organizations?
Yeah, that's a very important and a very large answer you can expect from me on that, because
Yeah, please
these
go
are
ahead.
the things we see every day, every time we enter office. So
Right.
first of all, my first concern is agile transformation is not considered as the main job. Some of the organizations pick some teams, they have their
Mhm.
deliverables, still they are trying to work on agile as a sample or a POC, or as a kind of a first time teams. That actually hampers the way of thinking. You have some other engagement in hand where deliverables are there in place, and you are trying to experiment with your agile transformation with that team. So be specific when you are trying to do the agile transformation. Have the roadmaps properly created with the
Mhm.
concern from top down, and everybody in the company has to be on the same page. It has one another challenge I have seen is the communication inconsistency. The
Mhm.
moment you have this initiated, I mean, the agile transformation is initiated by the leader, excellent speeches and town halls, open discussions on that. After 2 weeks or 3 weeks of that, the whole thing is pushed on to the agile coach, and nobody is seen in the scene,
Mhm.
and no leader is seen before the actual implementation starts. What happens because of that is you are an outsider. Even if you are a coach, you
Right.
are an outsider for a delivery team, because you don't play a role there. So they question your ability as why are you giving us these kind of things, and they don't have the trust on you. If the leader is with them
Mhm.
along with you, it creates a different impact on the teams when they are taking the ownership, and they know that there is a leader and who is supporting this agile transformation. If something goes wrong, there are people who support us. If that is not there,
Right.
you are not going to achieve that kind of a, trust from the teams. Some one of the principles of one of the values which you always hamper on when you are going for agile mindset, trust and
Mhm.
ownership. How do you get that without the support from the top down? When
Right.
you are trying to call everybody and saying that this is my roadmap, this is the person who's going to change. The first thing is my thinking power stops there when you are introduced as a person who is trying to change them.
Mhm.
Who are you to change me? Because I know my domain, I am the expert. But are you trying to tell that I was doing wrong all these years? So resistance is the biggest
Right.
problem we have to face when you are trying for an agile transformation. If your introduction is made in such a way that you are going to create a change, people will not be even listening to you
Mm.
after that one
Start
word.
resisting.
So yeah, start
Right.
resistance already develops in their mind. So I would say the first introduction about agile transformation, and the person who's going to help us with the transformation has to be in a positive way from the leaders. That note which goes from the leader, that the he or she is the coach who's going to guide us to improve our efficiency and use your abilities or expertise in creating such a framework for us where we can deliver better, something like that, creates that kind of an inclusion, right? That first speech itself will kill
Right.
some of the enthusiasm, or the resistance increases. So that is another
Right.
point. The third point I wanted to actually say is the first thing I said, the DNA. Changing in the behaviors is not given any importance. The first speech and the
Right.
roadmap is what the teams in the ground level see. After that, nobody cares about what is their insecurity, what is their problem with the resistance. Whenever there is a new role introduced because of the agile transformation, all of you are team members. Where is my seniority going? I have 12 years
Right.
experience in the domain. Now I am also one of these youngest people in the team. This is all you have to address when you are trying to do the transformations, the behavioral changes, the mindset changes. The fourth thing is, we have a feedback mechanism in agile transformations. Any framework you see, there is a feedback mechanism. Why should you wait for the feedback to come in that cycle, and you have to wait for the retrospection, or you have to wait for the inspect and adapt cycle to happen? Why can't you have the frequent
Right.
loops of feedback? It is not that you have to stop somebody giving a feedback. The message
Yeah.
has to be going perfectly into the teams that there is a place to share feedback, but it is not that you can't share before that time. If that can be
Right.
imbibed in the teams, there will be a lot of less frustrations, because you can't wait till that time and come up and say something about the feedback. The moment I feel it, there has to be a person who is approachable to share my feedback and see that it is getting into action.
Right.
And the third,
I think,
that
yeah.
other thing is, the one thing I wanted to say is the biggest challenge. Teams backslide into their old ways of working the moment the coach is going away.
Right.
Right? That's the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
So this list
I
goes
think,
on, but I
again,
wanted to hear from other people.
right, sure. So I think, yeah, very well. I think you took out 4 or 5 very important points, which are evident in almost all the organizations that try to get into the transformation. Vishu, would you like to quickly add on to this?
Yes. Earlier, I used to say people like being changed. But nowadays, I started telling that the leaders like a lot of changes, but they don't like being changed.
Yes.
Very few leaders are coming forward and they are changing, and they are not only preaching, they are practicing it. Those who are practicing
Right.
becoming the role model, those are the leadership people able to inspire the entire organization. And when they show the roadmap and introducing the agile to the organization, people are really accepting it and adoring it and adopting it. Otherwise, if the leaders are not doing it, and you hire somebody externally or internally, you promote somebody as agile coach or whatever you title, people are not going to care about that person. They even try to uh, irritate that person, or sometimes like this guy will feel, why should I chosen this coach position? That kind of a lot of people like move to agile coach and now they want to go back to the delivery. He said, so I'm very comfortable to go back and doing my work. I'm not here to change anybody, let me change myself. That kind of a frustration people are having when we talk about this agile transformation. uh, Now, on top of that, this digital transformation came. People are like thinking that the coach has the magic wand. With that, he can do both agile transformation as well as the digital transformation. See, digital
Right.
transformation also part of the agile transformation. That they need to understand that it's a one part of the transformation area. So, doing the technology transformation, I feel it's a digital transformation. But agile is the people, process, technology, it's leadership, culture. It's a 360 degree. So we need to really overcome that challenge. For that, my humble request to the all the industry people, wherever the leaders they like to see the change. So please, being you be the first person being changed, so that it's easy to make your organization to change,
Mhm.
and your agile transformation journey starts and it moves very smoothly. So that is my observation, Nilesh.
Nilesh, you there?
Nilesh.
Nilesh, we can't
Ah,
hear you.
hey, Ashutosh, you want to add something on top of that?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, guys,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me,
Nilesh, we
guys?
can hear you. Yes, yes, Nilesh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
now we can hear you. Now we can hear you.
I think there is a bit of lag. So, yeah, I was saying that thanks, Vish.
I think.
Ashutosh, you can add before he joins
Okay,
back.
okay. Yeah, okay, no worries, no worries. Yeah, 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 I agree with you. I mean, I agree with both of you what you're saying. And yeah, Nagini, thanks for that good extempore what you gave. I think I really could resonate some of the challenges. And I would have loved you to continue more on that, as you said, right? I mean, you can go on and all, but definitely some other time, some other day where we can talk. But yeah, and another challenge which I have seen is that, you know what, I mean, moment you have this transformation kicking in is that leaders actually expect very fast results. I mean, they say that, okay, now why is it taking so much time for us to know that how business agility is working, or why are the matrix taking so longer time? They're not willing to wait for it. I mean, they want like an instant noodles, or they want like an instant coffee, without realizing the fact that instant coffee tastes differently. Your brewed coffee has got its own bitter taste, which is appealing to people, right? And I think one of the challenges we do see is that they expect faster results. I mean, as Nagini mentioned, right? I mean, they will announce in road shows, they will announce in town halls saying that, you know what, we are on that journey of transformation. Expect in the next town hall, I'll give you some updates of how we have transformed. I mean, without even checking whether that commitment will work. I mean, they will actually announce it in the roadshow. And from a change agent perspective, I think life for us is very difficult. I always quote this example, and I mean, it's like, I mean, Nilesh would know this, the Pune traffic, right? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure all of you have traveled to Pune. See, the problem I always say with we as change agents is that we are considered to be like traffic signals in Pune. First of all, when they are working, no one follows them. And if they are not working, we are blamed for the failure. Okay, so it's like that situation, catch 22 situation we are in. I mean, the first blame comes to a change agent or a transformation agent, even if there is a kind of a small mistake we make. I'm not even talking about a blunder. I mean, we teach people that we should learn from mistakes, but we as coaches do not get that opportunity, right? We are the
Mhm.
first one to be put on the chopping block. We are the first one to be blamed. I would end that with that quote, I would say.
Okay. Thanks, Ashutosh. And guys, sorry I got dropped off for a moment because
No
of
issues.
some connection issue. So, yeah, I think we can move on to the next topic, which I wanted to bring up here is about measuring how the impact of the transformation on business agility, right? So, Ashutosh, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Sorry, I lost you in between. What was the question? Sorry.
I was talking about how do we actually measure the impact of the transformation on business agility. Now we have spoken
Mhm,
significantly about the
mhm,
transformation. We also spoke
mhm.
about agility. We also spoke about the challenges the organization are facing. I think an important area that we should touch upon is how do we measure it actually, whether it is happening, it is working on the ground. As an organization, how do I measure it?
Yeah, obviously, taking a cue from what we discussed earlier, I mean, each framework has got its own set of measurement criteria. But I would put it broadly into two main categories: a quantitative way in which you can measure, and second, of course, is the qualitative aspect of that metric also. So quantitative, obviously, has my product reached to a wider audience? Am I getting more customers? Or if it is a website, am I getting more clicks because of this new feature which has been introduced? Or for that matter, even the negative side of it, I introduce a new feature and then I get a feedback that no, people are not liking this feature. Like what happens usually with typically government sites like IRCTC and all, right? They introduce a new feature, people say that it is too taxing or it is too cumbersome, right? So that can be one of the metrics which we talk about: the product usage, the product spread, if I were to say, or how many new customers we have added. From a qualitative point of view, it will mainly be from the, I would say, the attractiveness of the product. Now, because of because of these agility measures introduced, am I getting a likes, more likes am I getting, or am I having a better
Mhm.
CSAT score? Are my more customers expressing about this product? I would say that would be the impact what you measure. And then of course there's also an impact which is not directly measured but what people experience. And I think I would like to quote an example here, without naming the organization. I'm sure all of us have visited Passport Seva Kendra in last few years, either for ourselves or for our family members, and I'm pretty much amazed by the experience what we have, right? Okay, right. Here was I remember
Mhm.
10 15 years back when I visited, it almost took my entire day, and still I was clueless what documents I need to submit when I come next day morning. And here, when I went there, by the time
Right.
I came out of the Passport Seva Kendra, I got an SMS that my passport has been sent for printing. I mean, I was so happy. I mean, that joy was there on my face. I mean, my wife was asking me, "Are you really traveling abroad next week?" I said, "No, but see this SMS." I mean, can you imagine this SMS coming in India from a government office, although it's a Ministry of External Affairs? Just imagine this message itself gives me that joy. So that joy, I don't know how you measure that joy. I mean, and that joy was there in many people that day when I saw that message when I came out of that Passport Seva Kendra. How do we measure that? Again, I don't have a clue. Maybe my
Mhm.
co-panelists can share some insight. But I think that is the impact which a business agility brings, which I'm trying to tell here, right? I mean, that is the impact that, okay,
Right.
something which is unexpectedly happening to the consumers, apart from the quantitative measures which I mentioned earlier.
Right, right. Yeah, I think rightly said. It's more about the value that I think we are delivering to the customer. At the end of it, whatever we are delivering, if it's not adding value to the customer, whatever transformation we talk about, it's not going to help. I think very well said, Ashutosh
Hmm.
over there. Vishu, would you like to share your thoughts on this one?
Yeah. So two ways. One is tangible one and the intangible. So on the tangible side, you can look at how much it is adding to the revenue growth, and how much you are able to save the cost also, the second one. Third one, how customer satisfaction index is increasing. And the fourth
Mhm.
one, employee satisfaction and engagement, how it is getting improved. Fifth one, what are the new learnings or new offerings we are able to produce by doing this agile transformation and contributing to the business agility. These are the five levers. Uh, Almost last 15 years I've done. It's applied to many of the organization, whatever the
Mhm.
size. So that really helps from board to till your team member get convinced. Why are we doing this? Why we need agile transformation? So this five big
Right,
matrix is really helping.
right. Thanks, Vishu, for that. Guys, looking at the time, I think we are in time for this discussion. I think we have covered a very, very good topic today, and I hope all the viewers here feel enlightened hearing our panelists on all these views. We talked about agile transformation in detail. We talked about what business agility means to all the businesses, right? We talked about the challenges. We talked about how do we measure it. And most importantly, we also talked about how do we leverage the agile transformation for getting the business agility, right? So I hope that out of this discussion we get a lot of insights, and we are actually just not implementing because of for the sake of implementing it in our workplaces, but we really do understand and trying to deliver the customer value. So on that note, I would really thank all our panelists. Nagini, Ashutosh, Vishu, thanks a lot for taking out this time and being part of this discussion. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you,
Okay, thanks,
Nilesh.
Nilesh.
Had a great
Thank you.
time discussing
Yeah.
all these points.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you
Nagini,
for the
and thanks,
opportunity.
Asutosh.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks Vishu and Nagini and Nilesh for the wonderful questions and insights.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing your deep knowledge about agile transformations with us. The panel session was full of enthusiasm and valuable learnings. Moving on to our next speaker, Parag is a freelance consultant with 25 years of experience in managing large programs, agile and leadership coaching in IT and manufacturing. Parag has successfully worked with leadership teams to define their transformation journey to business agility. Parag is passionate about delivering value by doing right things and set the teams on continuous improvement journey. Parag is a courageous and insightful decision maker who works on changing consensus to get best results. Parag has co authored a PMP study guide, developed courses for management programs for Liverpool and ITT universities. Parag is also a visiting faculty for project management in Symbiosis International University.
Welcome to this session. All roads lead to Rome is a saying. In one of the Hindi movies, it is also said, सारे रास्ते गॉड के पास जाते हैं. Today, we are going to dive into this aspect in the context of business agility. When we talk about business agility or any agile transformation for that matter, one thing is common: expect chaos. And that's my honest, humble experience over the period. It can start with very simple one liners like, okay, train our teams on Scrum, Kanban. Need to start sprinting. So let's do something about it. Implement less. We are already agile. Implement safe for us. These can all be a starting point for a chaotic few days, months, years ahead. Although we can expect chaos, we don't need to live with it. And that's where two things that have helped me personally in all my experience so far are keeping things simple and taking an holistic approach. Keeping it simple has always been a mantra for many. Any business management tool, topic, articles, you will always read about it, but necessarily following it is not that simple. How do we start? How do we get going about keeping things simple? Fortunately, in Agile Manifesto, there are values and principles as a bare minimum starting point, and this is something that each and everyone has known, understood, and is well aware of. Individuals and interactions, customer collaboration, working solution, responding to change, solid anchors in the way we work, the way we relate, the way we deliver value to our customers. Obviously, this is a guiding light that we need to follow in our transformation journey. What I have done over the years is I have found that interactions with the team members, with the leadership, using a simple tool like this, a speed car engine retrospective, brings in immense value and insights. Engine is something that keeps your team, your organization driving forward with speed. Obviously, you have been in business, you have been profitable, hopefully for a long time, and that means you're doing some things right. What are those things that we are doing right? If you attach a parachute to this car, to this engine, obviously it will slow down. So, what are those factors which slow us down, which slow the team, the organization down? If we continue on the same path, what is the abyss? Abyss is a trench in which the car can fall, the team can fail. And then, if we have identified the abyss, what is the bridge that we need to build to make sure that we continue to move forward? While interacting with the teams, management, leadership at all levels, this brings in solid insights, not only for us, but for them as a team, as an individual, as a group as well, and has been extremely useful conversation. There are standard templates, team level assessments, org level assessments that are available through various frameworks. They definitely help. It is a very structured mechanism, series of questions bucketed in different categories like product ownership and sprint health and technical health and discipline and whatnot. That's a second level of input. Nothing complicated again, has been established over a period of time and is easier for the teams to swallow as well. The third is introducing the seven wastes of lean, and not really talking about, oh, there are a lot of wastes in the team, but simply querying, what do you see around the way we operate currently? Do you see any of these wastes? Now, those conversations really help in bringing out insights. The beauty is, you are not trying to sell a framework, you are not trying to tell them a process at this point of time. You are just trying to understand maybe what their challenges are, what their strengths are. In this process, we realize many possibilities. In fact, just too many to get confused. We do document all the possibilities, none of the possibilities, none of the areas of improvement, areas that we need to continue working in the same manner are to be neglected. Never. We capture that in this transformation journey in the earlier days. And that's where we head on to looking at things in a holistic manner. While the teams have provided inputs based on what they understand, the management would have provided inputs based on what they see. It is important to look at from a business perspective end to end, because value realization happens through a series of steps where multiple actors come in, play their role, and go off. In one of my earlier experiences, this was the series of steps that we were able to capture when it came to how do the customers reach us with new requirements for features, for products, and how do we provide those products, features to those customers, and when can they start using it. So these were various steps. Creating that product, creating that enhancement or a feature is just one small box over here. There is legal compliance, technical enablement, demo, marketing collaterals. There is a lot of work that needs to happen. The contract sales process comes into play. Customizations before deployment at customer end may come into play. All of this takes time. In this series of steps, the next part that is important to understand is who all are involved, which departments play a role, and how long do they take to do their job. And once this particular piece, I remember this was about 8, 10 years ago, when this exercise was done, and it was realized that we take up to 1 year for first few customers to go live on any new version of our product. Oh, wow, that was a big realization for everybody. Now, the next step was, why does it take so long? How can we minimize this particular time period, the gap, time to value? What happens in each stage? From a compliance perspective, from enablement perspective, from demo environment and collaterals perspective, what is it that is the team doing? Those stakeholders involved in that part are doing. And what do they think can be improved? Again, this is all brainstorming conversation, exploratory conversations. What all can be done? People have ideas. People are extremely good at what they do, has been the fundamental belief that I have been working. And those ideas actually give so many possibilities for any organization to improve. And when we document all those areas in terms of the current challenges, current actions that are taken, versus what all can be done to improve, you obviously are moving a step forward to agility. The entire value creation and value delivery part, everybody that you are talking to in a way is getting sensitized to the part in terms of there are areas of improvement, there are ways and means by which we can improve. That's where the mindset change starts happening. Mindset change will not come from trainings, just giving printouts of manifesto values and principles. It will come through seeing the benefit, understanding what's in it for me. Why should I change? And these conversations actually help in that context. Various such exercises have been done so far, maybe in one organization, in multiple organizations. Every time the experience has been the same. Once these conversations are done, the stage is set for you to get the ball rolling. Awareness, alignment, and agreement. These are the three A's that help move forward with great pace. Awareness at leadership level, alignment across various functions, and agreement that there is a need to change, there is a need to improve our customer experience, the way we realize and deliver value to our customers. The way to articulate that is clearly write down what is the current state and what is the expected future state that we as a business want to achieve. In this example, as I said, 5 customers go live in about 12 months of the release. Maybe we want to change that to 5 customers go live in about 3 months of the release. Oh, that's the future state. That's where the industry is moving. That's where the competition is growing, and hence we need to respond. We need to make sure that our customers are successful and hence reduce the time. Oh, can it be 3 weeks? I would love to. But let's say if the first milestone is 3 months, 5 customers in 3 months, even that would be a great improvement. Maybe penetration testing is taking 4 months, is in some other group. This was the case. Okay, we want to do it in 2 weeks. What should we do? In some other business, trial to customer conversion is 12%. Customer onboarding takes about 4 weeks. License renewals is at 60%. Revenue from new logos is 15%. These are challenges that they have. And for the expected 2x, 3x, 4x growth that the organization is looking for, the future state is so totally different. Revenue from new logos is expected to be 45%. Customer onboarding time is required to be 2 days. Unless customer onboarding expedites, maybe customer experience doesn't improve. Maybe if they don't feel the value of the product sooner after paying, they may not use it, they may not renew it. and hence there might be parameters that are related to each other. Now, this is something that becomes as a solid guideline, a common language for everybody in the organization to pay attention to. They know the exact outcomes that we are trying to achieve. So, keeping it simple and looking at it holistically helps everybody in the organization to speak the same language and ensure that the understanding that the business needs from this transformation is absolutely clear to each and every person, each and every stakeholder involved in this journey. These well defined outcomes can be easily categorized as to add customer experience, improve quality, reduce time to market, time to value, time to get the customer onboarded, time that the customer takes to get a particular use case handled through the product, reduce risk to the business, maybe from a customer perspective, reduce risk from our own business perspective, reduce cost, operations cost, maintenance cost. So these are the five letters that we need to pay attention to: cost, experience, risk, quality, and time. The initials are circuit, can be pronounced as circuit, electrical circuit. And this also was a character in a movie, in a Hindi movie, Munna Bhai. This is just probably to remember the context in terms of whatever we try and do, the outcomes that we are trying to achieve are these five: improve the customer experience, improve the quality, and reduce cost, risk, and time. Another alignment and common understanding that gets developed, because this is where we want to make sure that whatever information that we have captured through the value realization analysis, the holistic approach that we took in coming out with the current state and future state, the information that we have captured in terms of what the team felt about the engines, the parachutes, the abyss, the wastes, and the feedback from the team level assessments or the unit level assessments. All of that is your backlog for the entire transformation process. So that backlog gets curated, and there would be multiple streams, multiple initiatives that could be run to solve those existing problems. Of course, cross functional initiatives will be there. Each initiative, each function will have to do something differently. There will be dependencies across the functions, but everyone involved is required to know why are we doing what we are doing. And that's where the understanding in terms of the circuit, understanding in terms of the future state will help and align everybody. And that's the important job that management plays in this entire journey. While we are working on this entire piece, trying to lay the roadmap for this transformation, the business agility goal that the organization has, one has to prioritize for sustenance. First and foremost is the sponsorship. Sponsorship for this kind of journey is immensely important, and that sponsorship is not for people or not necessarily for the amount of money that it takes. It is more about, yes, those are the outcomes, those are the future states that we care about and everybody in the organization should care about. Obviously we will need people, we'll need to train them, coach, mentor, but over and above that, we need to create champions who will take this journey forward. It is not a period of 6 months, 1 year, 2 years for any organization. It is a way of working, it is a way of living. And hence, we need internal champions which will keep influencing more and more people in the organization. Organization keeps growing, people keep joining in, and everybody needs to feel why we are doing and how we are doing it and how can it be further improved. Continuous improvement is the job for the champions. Process: optimize the whole. Look at the entire value chain, optimize the whole, simplify, automate wherever needed, put in objective measurements, measure to improve. That's the mantra, right? And that's where focus on process, and of course on the tools and infra as well. Tools and infra to bring in transparency, eliminating or reducing the waste, identifying areas of improvements through continuous measurement, trends over a period of time, what is helping, what is not helping. All those data points, all those insights can be provided by tools. Eventually, we want to improve metrics like the cycle time, the lead time, the earlier future state metrics that we saw. What is the time for onboarding? What is the retention of the customers that we have year over year? New logos that we are signing year over year. So those people, process, tools, all of this together needs to lead to the expected outcomes. That's why we have said all roads lead to Rome. What it really means is addressing core issues across the business value chain in a systematic manner is the key for any business to succeed. For the people involved, they need to know why are we doing it and what's in it for me. For the organization, business agility is just not a buzzword. For the organization, it is a means to grow. For organization, it is the means to beat the competition. And hence, whichever road we take, it has to start with core issues. We have to address those core issues, and that's the only way to be really making progress on the road to business agility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Parag, for sharing your valuable learnings. Moving on to our next speakers, Em and Adrian. Em is one of the most experienced scaled agile practitioners in the world, having started working with SAFe even before it was called SAFe. She was one of the first 200 SPCs, one of the first 20 SPCTs, and one of the first 4 SAFe fellows. M has 3 official SAFe case studies, the most of any individual SAFe practitioner in the world. She has 2 number 1 best-selling SAFe books, Tribal Unity and the Art of Avoiding a Train Wreck. In 2014, M founded Pretty Agile with the goal of helping organizations achieve business agility with SAFe and Tribal Unity. Adrian is the VP Operations at Pretty Agile with demonstrated experience building new organizations and an impressive track record of delivering strategic development programs. Passionate mentor of product development and project best practices from product inception to delivery. She is also a solution driven servant leader with an emphasis on risk mitigation, innovative strategies, and building relationships to create high performing teams. She is also the author of an Amazon bestseller, Safe 5 SPCT, and is also an international speaker.
Hello all, my name's M. Campbell Pretty, and I'm joining you with Adrian Wilson. And we are in Melbourne, Australia. So greetings from Melbourne. Today we are going to share with you the art of avoiding a train wreck. Now, speaking of getting better, you better baseline before you start, because sooner or later somebody's going to ask you about all this stuff you did and you transformed, and what benefit are we getting from this again? And it may be obvious to you. I know when I started doing this, it was obvious to me that people were happier, customers were happier, the teams doing the work were happier, the environment was friendlier, and we even brought down cost. But it was kind of hard to prove. So, what you want to do, now you found your train, let's get some baseline metrics. Don't pick too many. Think about the things that are important to your organization. So, are you interested in employee engagement? Maybe you want to ask the employee net promoter score question. Would you recommend working here to a friend or colleague? Are you interested in lead time or cycle time? Are you interested in improving quality? In which case, you might want to consider those pesky escaped defects that made it through to production and how many of those you have. You could also look at things like process cycle time efficiency if you feel like taking on a value stream mapping exercise. There's a multitude of things that might be interesting to your organization. Work out what they are, 5's a good number, and get yourself some baseline metrics. So you can come back to this later and show your organization how your Agile release train has improved things for your organization. Now, of course, that means we have to be successful. So over the many years we've been doing this, we've really reached the conclusion that there are 4 key ingredients for a successful train launch: leadership, ready features, real Agile teams, and the knowledge with which to execute, both the PI planning and the PI execution. So let's start by having a look at how leadership plays a role in the success of the Agile release train. Firstly, we know from Lean that leadership is the foundation. Over the years, I've become firmly convinced that success with scaling Agile and launching Agile release trains begins and ends with the behavior of the leaders that are leading that change. That belief has been underscored by more recent findings from Scaled Agile that indicate the number one success factor for SAFe as a whole is the behavior of leaders and leading by example. So if leaders are so important, how are we going to find them? It's a real struggle sometimes. I feel like lean Agile leaders can just be as rare as hen's teeth. They're just not easy to spot. So what I look for is a leader or an individual in a leadership role potentially who is what I would call intellectually curious. You'll recognize this person because they're going to ask a lot of really good questions. That's usually an indication that they have an open mind, and maybe they're interested in not just becoming the lean Agile leader leading the charge for your Agile release train, but also becoming that insatiable learner. A lean Agile leader is also a lifelong learner. Another key is to see what books they've been reading. Maybe you visit their office and have a look at their shelves. Maybe you're in the remote world and you have to just say, hey, what's the last book that you read? What are you reading at the moment? What thought leaders inspire you? There's something to be said for those who take the time to learn. I heard a great quote at a conference a number of years ago. Those who can read and don't are only marginally better off than those who can't. Seems like as good a reason as any to try and pick leaders who like to learn. Speaking of learning, you found your executive sponsor, but they're not the only leader in this ecosystem. There's going to be a bunch of folks in leadership roles, in management roles, who need to be a part of this journey. Maybe they read, maybe they don't. But what we can do is take them through the 2-day journey that is SAFE's Leading Safe Training. This is the course taken by every leader in every organization around the world that is using SAFE or planning to use SAFE. I think some folks are quick to dismiss training, classroom training, really, what am I going to learn in a classroom? But the thing that's important here is it provides the foundational knowledge. It provides the foundational knowledge on which the experience that people get over time sticks. So, to quote Edwards Deming, experience by itself teaches nothing. Without theory, experience has no meaning. Without theory, one has no questions to ask. Hence, without theory, there is no learning. Start with the theory, understand the concepts, and then those leaders, as they go on this journey, can ask some really pointed questions about how the organization works and what we're doing to move it forward. Now, this group of leaders we've taken through this Leading Safe class, another sign that you found yourself a potential Lean Agile leader is that they like to read. I heard this great quote at a conference once. Those who can read and don't are only marginally better off than those who can't. People who read really do manage to get ahead because so much has been written about how to succeed with Lean and Agile. Book learning is great, but it's not enough. We also need to take those leaders and introduce them to SAFE using the standard 2-day Leading Safe course. Even though they will get experience by coming through the journey and launching that train, they need the theory, the base knowledge with which to interpret what is happening and learn. As Deming would say, experience by itself teaches nothing. Without theory, experience has no meaning. Without theory, one has no questions to ask. Hence, without theory, there is no learning. So get that leadership team into a Leading Safe class. And that can start to set the foundation for the next thing you need. A team of Lean Agile leaders. We always say Agile is a team sport. Well, so is Agile leadership. If we're going to launch a train, we're going to need a team of leaders to make that happen. Perhaps you find yourselves with the Three Musketeers, otherwise known as the art leadership. So find yourself a release train engineer, an agile program manager, for want of a better term, a facilitator, a lean agile leader, a product manager, someone who knows the vision and the roadmap that you're going to be building, and a system architect, somebody who understands the ecosystem that your train will be operating in. And sometimes it makes sense to add some line managers, the people who lead, the people who are going to be part of the train. Have them together come up with a plan for launching that Agile release train. You could think of that as a PI plan for launching the train, and then have them follow the commitment paradigm we expect the teams to use. Show us your fist of five and level of commitment to that plan. Then every day, come together as an Agile team in front of your Kanban board and openly share your progress and your blockers, and agree as a team the focus for the day ahead if you're to get that train to the station on time.
Perfect. So now we have a release train. We have some folks to lead it. Now we need some work. And we'd have to say that for the most part, SAFE is really idiot-proof or almost idiot-proof. We think it's pretty idiot-proof, except for the one time where
You have a bunch of features in your backlog that's the one-liner. The hippo or that executive showed up the morning of PI planning and said, I have a great idea, team. Here you go. It's going to be absolutely great. That will not be helpful. No features isn't helpful. One-liner features isn't helpful. 127 features like an art that we know about won't be helpful either. So there is a bit of a sweet spot of setting our train up for success. So we want to talk about how do we do that. So in the continuous delivery pipeline in SAFe, the front part of that pipeline is continuous exploration. And we're actually really serious about this isn't a one and done kind of experience where the product manager and the system architect sit in a closet and start writing features to chuck at the release train. That's what we're looking for. We are looking for a really great process that's going to yield features that meet a really strong definition of ready. But we also want to create space for the teams on the release train to actually look at these features before we get into PI planning so that they can give us some feedback. So we do a capacity allocation on all pretty agile release trains where we have some space for the features and for some enablers and some tech debt, but we also throw in some space for something that we call Disco. It's our short for discovery, but we also like to use a little bit of 1970s Saturday Night Fever disco reference too. We actually did another talk on feature discovery, which might interest you of actually with a little bit more deep dive into how we go about doing feature discovery. But this is space where we reserve time in every iteration for every team on the release train, 10%, so that they can help refine the backlog of features for the next program increment planning event. So it's a couple of hours to get started with in an iteration where the teams plus the system architect, the product manager, we get into a room, we have a conversation to further refine those features within the iteration, again, for the next program increment. It's like taking the iteration backlog refinement meetings for stories, but we're scaling it to the trains backlog and getting the best possible advice you can ever get about your features is actually from the people who do the work. And that's why we want to go to the teams directly. So I've talked about definition of ready, and this is a big deal. This is how you avoid those one-liner features going to your release train or having also having too many of them or having 200 pages for a particular feature. We have a really short, sharp template for the definition of ready. Not surprising, you would see a description and a benefit hypothesis. Going back to high school science, what do we think we're going to get when we build this? Because maybe we're innovating, maybe we don't know. Acceptance criteria, always a must. A high-level solution, and we work with the system architect to create a standard view of the architecture that the release train can actually touch. And then with every feature, we start to turn on and off just by using colors to show to the release train which parts of the architecture do we think actually has to change to implement this feature. So the system architect does a little bit of thinking ahead of time. We call this laying the tracks for the release train. Don't you love all the train metaphors in SAFe? The architect laying the tracks, and which means every time we look at a feature, the solution on the page will change, and it becomes really obvious to the teams on the release trains where common parts of the architecture are going to be touched, and we can start to reason our way through how do we don't step on each other. This is really quite a powerful pattern we found in the past. A couple of things to round out in our feature definition of ready. Sooner or later, you'll get to a high-level estimate. We're really just trying to care for that we've shaped the work. The feature can be delivered inside the program increment with high confidence, high probability from the release train. That's our goal, and to make sure that it's not a one-liner feature. So that gets us set for the first launch, but now we need a system that's going to help us continue to get ready. Because remember, I said continuous exploration. We really mean that. This is not a one and done kind of experience. We tell our release trains, day one, iteration one, you have to get your backlog ready for the next program increment planning. It's very much what we charge the product manager and the system architect with, as being the primary owners of the content of that backlog. So we create a Kanban system. And many of you will be familiar with Kanban boards. And here the top board is showing the connection to a portfolio Kanban where really big ideas come from. And through prioritization, we can feed the release train from the work from those epics that are being approved by the portfolio team and feeding them into the Agile release train. We can also zipper in the ideas that the release train is having and prioritize with the ideas that are coming from the portfolio Kanban. And this will help us visualize whether we're actually getting work ready for the release train in time for PI planning. And it also is a great way to visualize the entire flow of the work once we leave PI planning, how we're continuing to build it and getting it to the all-important done. Very powerful tool. Really invite the RTE to make sure that they have a program Kanban board to help visualize that work, to make sure that we're actually going to have those features ready in time for PI planning. So now we've got a backlog. Let's talk about the other really key ingredient, our Agile teams, the real Agile teams, not the fake Agile teams, the real Agile teams. So we're really deliberate here when it comes to creating Agile release trains on or creating teams on an Agile release train. We pay attention to some human research done by a Harvard professor, J. Richard Hackman, research done circa 1970s. He says that 30% of a team's effectiveness for the life of the team is based on how they are launched. So we want every single percent of that when we launch Agile release trains, and we want to have some fun. So let's have a look at how we do that. First, we start with team size. Teams can't be too big. I don't know how many times we've come across teams that have had 14 people on a team. That is a lot of lines of communication. Here we're looking at, on this slide, we like no more than 9 folks on a team. That's 36 lines of communication. 14 folks on a team, 91 lines of communication. We just know that big teams can't communicate well. So we like to err on nothing bigger than 9, preference to be 8 at 28 lines of communication. Then we're also very deliberate about what does cross-functional mean. What we'd like to have is all the people in a team that with all the skill sets that we need to deliver on the mission and vision of the release train. So as we show on this particular slide, in the top right-hand corner, where you've got the row of pink cards and the row of blue cards and the row of yellow cards, this is the way the organization was organized before we got started, very based on functional silos, the team of BAs and the team of testers and the team of developers. And the bottom picture right below it is you see those cards intermixed. We've actually gone and created a more cross-functional view, which again gets us back to a cross-functional team. In theory, we're setting the train up for success that any feature that's in the backlog for the release train, a team can pull. That gives us the maximum flexibility. It also starts to create cross-functional teams and cross-functional skills within people on the release train. So we go from the standard I-shaped person to T-shaped to even E-shaped, where you have more than one primary skill. Sometimes organizations do this design. We always do this design with an organization, I should say, but then we actually open it up to another way of creating teams once we've established this framework of what would that cross-functional skill set look like. If we had that, then we could actually do a self-selection workshop with an organization. This is allowing folks to self-select into their own teams. And some executives say, well, wait a minute, but they're going to choose to work with their friends. Well, yeah, wouldn't that be great? Because as it shows here, we take our cues from a good friend of Pretty Agile, Sandy Mamoli and David Mole. This is a facilitated process of letting people self-organize into small cross-functional teams based on the belief that people are at their happiest and most productive if they can choose what work they work on and who they work with. How great is that? So we put some rules in place. That's where we go through. We're very deliberate about understanding what are the roles that need to be in the team, just like we showed you on that last slide. But then we facilitate the teams and the folks choosing which teams and who they work with. And it's really quite fun. It's very culturally very different than what most organizations think about when we create teams. So once we get the folks into teams, then we set about actually having some fun, and it's with our team formation or our team formation day. So that might start with self-selection. That might also start with just the organization saying, here are the cross-functional teams, and socializing that with the folks. Next, we move on to it's time to name the train, which is very fun, and its theme. It's funny when we start naming trains and themes. Over the last few years, you wouldn't be surprised. We've launched a lot of Marvel trains with the Avengers team and the Hulk team and the Black Panther team. They're all very, very fun. One organization was a telecom company we were working with. We were in the broadband business, and it was the broadband Agile Release train. And somebody went, "Oh, that means Bart." So the train theme was The Simpsons, and we had the Duff team and the Lisa team and the Mr. Burns team. Super, super fun. Very, very fun train. And these patterns work really well even in a remote world. We have the teams create product boxes. So you have examples here of actual teams building a box that's describing them. Just like if you went into a grocery store and you saw all those boxes of cereal and they tell you how great they taste and how much vitamins they have in them. We use that same pattern where the team is the product and they're creating their own product box to describe their team. And the one in the middle here is a train that we launched remotely in this COVID world, completely online. It was a Mount Olympus train. One of the teams was called the Caboose of Zeus. They even created their own icon of Zeus in the back of a train in Brisbane, which is a city north of Melbourne here in Australia. And it's very fun. The bottom train there was the train of dragons. The leadership was Puff the Magic Dragon and another team called Godzilla. Just some good fun. Just a very different day culturally to generate some passion and some familiarity for the team and just some time for them to gel. And a little bit of kindergarten 5-year-old get to play with some scissors and tape and paper in real life, and obviously in the digital world that extends pretty well too. Another great way to build some culture for teams is having a t-shirt and or a tribe t-shirt as we're showing here. Just creates that sense of community, that this is our train, we're all in it together to win it. The last thing we do typically in team day is create some space for the teams to create their charter, their working agreements. So here we're showing one of actually in person way back when, before the year of 2021 that just seemed to never end. And then the Ministry of Magic here, Harry Potter train that we got to launch. And this was their team, and they creating their working agreements completely in a digital kind of space. Really thankful to find out that Team Day translates really well into an online, completely remote COVID world. So now we've made that investment into that team effectiveness. We've created some team culture. We've created a wonderful train. Now we might actually want to, I don't know, do some work. What do you reckon? Not quite yet.
Not yet?
Not
No?
quite yet. So we found ourselves some leaders. We
Yeah.
prepared some features, we created some teams, but how do they know what to do?
Oh, that's the one thing everybody forgets.
It sure is. It sure is. So the knowledge with which to execute is absolutely key. SAFE has long been of the view the key to success is train everyone, launch trains. Pretty simple, really. But here's what happens. Train everyone? But my teams are already agile. But I don't have the budget to train everyone. You mean everyone except the vendor teams and contractors, right? No, we mean everyone. If you want to take 100 odd people on a journey to work in a different way, then the minimum you can do is teach them how to work in that new way. We've been doing this for about 10 years now, and I can tell you the number one cause of train wrecks that we see is people who took those 100 people, asked them to work differently, but didn't bother to tell them what that different was. And then when they got the results, they were disappointed. So, the knowledge with which to execute. What is my role on an agile team that is using the Scaled Agile framework? Surely that's the minimum we can do for our people. Scaled Agile framework provides a really clear implementation roadmap, provides the guidance on the role-based training that is needed to launch an Agile release train. Leading safe for the leaders, product owner training for the product owners and product managers and other folks who have a role in gathering requirements, Scrum Master training for safe Scrum Masters, perhaps even architecture training for safe architects. And then we launch the train. It's called a quick start, and it's safe for teams training immediately followed by the first PI planning event. We like to call it a 7-day quick start. So we take the organization for 7 days. We start on day 1 and 2 by grabbing those Scrum Masters. And maybe they've been Scrum Masters before, maybe they're new to Scrum Mastery. Either way, we're going to ask them to come on our 2-day Safe Scrum Master course. Because even if they have experience as Scrum Masters, even if they have a Scrum Master certification, it's important that they understand the role of the Scrum Master in the context of a team of Agile teams, working with SAFE, being an Agile release train, performing PI planning, and executing a program increment as a team of Agile teams. It's a little bit different. We roll from that right into our team formation day. So we can spend that time, teams getting to know each other before we roll into Safe for Teams training. So this is really unusual. We call this big room training. We have all the teams on the train being trained together. The Scrum Masters, product owners, and teams with their work going through the same class as a team of teams. Then immediately rolling into the first PI planning event. It creates step change. Pause, learn to work in a new way, plan to work in a new way, return to the office, and start working in the new way. I think one of the most surprising things about this approach when I first attempted it was the value of that big room training. You know, it's 50 to 150 people in one training event. Doesn't seem quite right. However, we get the teams working on their real work in their real teams. Everybody hears the same message from the same trainers. Teams start to bond. It's an alignment play. It's a team of teams, one team culture play. and it is the only way that Pretty Agile's launched trains since 2015. We like it that much. So with the train up and running and away, how do we keep it on the tracks? Well, we like to borrow from Woody Zull, the thought leader behind mob programming. When he talks about how he discovered mob programming, or how the team he was working with discovered mob programming, he talks about them working together and reflecting at the end of the day on what went well, and then deciding to do more of that the next day. So he calls it turn up the good. What is working, and let's do more of that. So with that in mind, as you're running through and executing your program increments, there's a lot of good in SAFe, but what would happen if we turned up the good? So some suggestions for you. You could turn up the good in the innovation and planning iteration. Instead of innovation, all saved up for a couple of days at the end of every program increment, include some innovation time in every iteration. Not instead, but as well. Creating time and space for teams to innovate pays back in spades. It will pay back in innovative ideas you can take to your customers. It will pay back in innovative ideas that they use to improve the way that they work. So at Pretty Agile, we like to take 10% of the capacity of every team on the train, every iteration, and invest that in innovation. The only rules are you must share with your colleagues on the train how you invested that time. And no one can steal your innovation time. Another turn up the good pattern is taking ArtSync and making it better. So ArtSync in Textbook SAFe brings together Scrum Masters, product owners with the RTE product manager and system architect once or twice a week for half an hour to an hour. Well, what if we did that every single day? We wouldn't need the hour. Maybe just 15 minutes every single day, maybe as a part of a cascading set of stand-ups that we like to refer to as daily cocktail hour. It's not what you think it is.
I really wish it was, but yeah.
So there are no cocktails in cocktail hour. It's called that because as you look around a physical room where people are holding a cocktail hour, you see lots of little huddles like it's a cocktail party. This is a great way to kick off your morning, maybe a leadership sync, teams doing their regular stand-ups, and then at the bottom of the hour, Art Sync, 15 minutes, short, sharp updates, heartbeat of the Agile release train, what's hot today, what do we need to focus on for the day ahead, with supporting teams meeting after and taking actions to support the broader train during the course of the day. Turning up the good. So, what else can we do to turn up the good? At the end of the program increment, we have Inspect and Adapt. Inspect and Adapt is an opportunity for the train to reflect on systemic issues and identify opportunities for improvement through the problem-solving workshop. But why wait? Why wait 12 weeks before you focus on how we could improve? Instead, we ask teams, as part of their retrospective, which they're doing every 2 weeks, every iteration, to identify things outside their control. Those potentially systemic issues that we may need some help with resolving. The team sends a delegate to a session we call Bubble Up. It's the last session on every iteration. And the teams share those problems, and we have leaders there to hear those problems and potentially take action, or potentially build the backlog of things that we might need to address at the end of the program increment. But let's keep our finger on the pulse and let's see those systemic issues as they come up during the course of PI planning, not just at the end. Speaking of PI planning, How about we turn up the good in PI planning? So if PI planning is awesome, and let's face it, PI planning is awesome, then how do we get more of that? And part of the awesomeness of PI planning is bringing the entire Agile release train together. So everybody comes together, spends time together every 8, 10, or 12 weeks. What if we did that every iteration? So something we really like to do with our Agile release trains, both online and in person, is bring them together for 1 hour on the first day of every iteration. We call it Unity Hour. We use the time to create connection across the Agile release train, get people working with folks who they wouldn't normally work with, creating connections between the teams, building culture, keeping everyone in alignment, and getting some of the buzz that we get from PI planning injected into every iteration.
Absolutely. And this works just as well remotely. We had a name the desk contest in the last couple of weeks with one of our release trains. Everyone took a picture of their desk, and it was amazing how long it took people to straighten their desk up before they could take a picture and send their picture in, and then start the name the desk contest. It was really quite fun. I think it would take me a long time to clean my desk.
Well, folks, bottom line, if you didn't pick it up, really, it's all about the people and building great teams. If you want to succeed with SAFe, if you want to avoid train wrecks, then keep people front of mind. You can't go wrong.
Really can't.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. If you enjoyed our stories, you might like our book. It is The Art of Avoiding a Train Wreck. It is available on Amazon. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us at this conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma and Adrien, for sharing your valuable learnings. Moving ahead, it's a pleasure to introduce Annie. She started her career as a systems engineer and worked many years feeling there should be a way of having better interactions at work while creating great products that make clients happy at the same time. She has found in the agile mindset and techniques the means to achieve that goal. Nowadays, she leads Globant's organizational agility practice and works as an agile coach.
Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. The pandemic allowed me to strike off one thing that I had in my bucket list for long, practicing yoga. I started practicing Iyengar yoga. That's a kind of yoga that we practice here in Argentina with the guidance of my good friend Lula, who is a yoga instructor. So every Sunday morning I wake up, I prepare the space for the practice, also known as my living room. I open Zoom and I let myself be guided by Lula's voice. You're probably wondering if you got into the wrong event. No, you're not. You're on AgileNXT, and I promise that if you stay with me for a while, I'll talk about agility. But you know, the thing is that I've been helping and supporting organizations in their way to organizational agility for a few years now. And both the approach of Iyengar to the practice, or at least the way I understand the approach of Iyengar to the practice, and the conversation that Lula and I had about it made me reflect about my own way of practicing agility, or my approach to practicing agility. Okay, but what am I talking about when I talk about organizational agility? Is there another kind of agility? Those are questions that I usually get when I start talking about this. So, from my point of view, organizational agility is the ability of an organization to evolve its way of working, to adapt to the environment, to develop resilience, and discover new possibilities while navigating uncertainty. So I think this takes agility to another level. From the practices that teams need to deliver value continuously, to the way that the whole organization thinks about its business, its internal structure, its processes, its culture, everything. And it's not that practicing agility on teams is wrong. I think it's not enough. Many organizations start there, but I think the way they start sometimes it's a problem, and that's what I would like to share with you on this talk. And I think this ability that I'm talking about, organizational agility, requires developing a muscle flexible enough to enable continuous evolution on organizations so that you can avoid painful future transformations. And I think that's very similar to yoga, right? So today we are going to talk about inversion, we are going to talk about discomfort, we are going to talk about pain, we are going to talk about asana or yoga postures, and we are going to talk about lifting your heart up. So please stay with me for a while. Here are some of the insights that I would like to share with you today that might help you in your way to organizational agility. So my first insight is don't go full inverted from day one. So inverted asanas that are yoga's postures are the most difficult ones, and you don't do that on your first practice. And sometimes I'd rather say that you wouldn't do that in your first year. So everything in your practice prepares you to do inverted positions eventually. Organizations that have gone through profound transformation towards organizational agility definitely look very different from the hierarchical, functional based organizational structure they once were. But organizations that turn their structure upside down from one moment to another have suffered a lot and were deeply wounded, yet not mortally wounded. And that doesn't mean that you've achieved the purpose of really getting to organizational agility. Maybe you have your tribes, you have your chapters, you have all the fancy names, but you are not really being agile. Even more, some years ago, I came across the adjacent possible theory. That is the theory that explains innovation in nature. And the way that I understand that theory is that given a certain moment or a certain context of a living organism, there are a given number of possibilities for it to evolve, but not infinite. And when that organism evolves, another set of possibilities emerge that are very different than if the organism had taken another path of evolution. And I totally relate this theory with what happens with changes in organizations that are really, really, really complex living organisms. We cannot put change, we cannot force it, we cannot skip steps, and we definitely can't trace a roadmap because we have to choose one of the most feasible possibilities ahead, make a small step, and contemplate the new organization that emerges afterwards. It's like we get a new map of a new organization every time we make a change, and we have to contemplate that. So what you're seeing in the picture is not an inverted asana, but I wanted the picture to show you what you are seeing is an asana that implies to open your breastbone. It's an arc, and you stayed in Iyengar practice. You stay in an asana for a few minutes, So the practice proposal is to use scaffolding structures. So what you're seeing on the picture is that I have some blocks behind my back to be like supporting my back, and I have that square piece of furniture over there that's guiding where my arms should be in the posture. And you also can see that's not the final posture. You have the drawing there, what it should be like at the end. But that scaffolding structure is helping me an approach to the asana that I wouldn't be able to do in the way that I am in the practice. So what's my proposal to organizations? My proposal is to use scaffolding structures and elements to do the transition towards organizational agility. For example, I recommend creating teams with senior managers of the organization with the mission to support the organization towards the transformation, making experiments that in turn, if successful, would become organizational changes. Um, Everyone brings to the table the role that they've been performing in the organization and contribute with our knowledge and the power to make these decisions and change policies eventually. And it's important not to let the scaffold go ahead of time, because everything could fall apart if you do. So my next insight could be start with what you have. When I started practicing yoga, I was like, okay, when you start a new activity and you want to buy all the material that you need to do the activity, and Lula's proposal was, no, please start with what you have. What we are trying to do is this. We need to build this scaffolding structure that looks like this. What do you have in your house? And what you are seeing in the picture is that I'm using some different kind of chairs that I have at home, pieces of furniture, blankets, armchairs, belts, whatever I have at home that I can use to start the practice. So you bought tickets for an Agile transformation, and this is the moment where you have to breathe, because you've decided you want to transform the organization, and you've started to buy tools, to hire people for new roles, to fire people just in case, and announce a new set of policies. Please just breathe. You can start practicing agility with what you have. You don't need a fancy and expensive tool to create a Kanban board. There are a lot of pretty simple tools for free that do the trick. Even any tool that you already have on your computer that has a canvas can be used for that. And of course, if you're at the office, you can use a wall and post-its there. What you really need to start practicing agility is to have some pilot, multidisciplinary teams with clear business objectives to start practicing agility without changing any of the structure and job descriptions yet. You need to run experiments and check how your organization reacts to those experiments, what works and what doesn't. My next insight is inhabiting discomfort. I know that by looking at the picture, you can see, what you see, you can really realize what I'm feeling right there, but I can assure you that I'm not comfortable. That's an asana that's really, really difficult for me. And the path towards organizational agility isn't easy as well. There are going to be moments of discomfort that need to be inhabited. Agile practices like yoga asanas are organic, but don't feel organic at the beginning. So it's important to inhabit this initial discomfort and remain in the asana, remain in the practice, so that the organization's muscle gets a bit more flexible and stronger than it was before. And I want to be really clear about this. Discomfort isn't pain, though. And it's really important to recognize the difference. The same way nothing hurts after yoga practice, nothing should hurt in the name of agility. To be able to spot the difference, you need to know your body, or in this case, your organization. It's really important to assess continuously how people are doing with the new practices to steer the wheel as many times as possible. So my next insight is the Asana Trap. So, the scaffolds, or these scaffolding structures are there to get to an asana, to get to a posture, to get to an actual value. And forms appear first, but then something else needs to emerge, or the practice becomes pointless. But since we learn through forms, we imitate forms instead of trying to get the idea of we are trying to do. How many times have we been in that loop of Scrum events without delivering anything at the end of the sprint? And I know we can strike off items on a checklist. We can say we did the planning, we did daily meetings, we did review meetings, we did retrospectives, but we are clearly not using those practices as a continuous improvement enabler to deliver value at regular intervals. And even more, when teams in your organization are delivering working software regularly using Scrum, but if that software doesn't help to achieve change in business objectives, you are no way near organizational agility. My next insight is let the scaffold go. So the scaffold is there to complement what we lack as an organization and to help in the transition. It's not a place to stay and rest for eternity. The scaffold is temporary and changes over time. So if the scaffold isn't working or it serves its purpose, we have to let it go or let it change. What you are seeing in the picture is me doing an asana that's about balance, and I started doing the asana with some block to help me balance my left leg and my left arm. And once I prepare to do the balance, that I'm there, that I'm concentrated on the asana, then I let the block go and I'm in balance. So, for example, if a team once needed to think its value increments in sprints and now has achieved continuous delivery, probably having sprints as a scaffold isn't necessary anymore. And it's probably starting to generate organizational fat. And I'm not going to address the issue of organizational fat here, but it's a very important point that we need to be aware of if we would like to get organizational agility. And it's also an art finding that delicate turning point where you can let the scaffold go without everything falling apart, as we talked before, and it requires a lot of self-awareness. And my next insight is really related. So, of course, if you can let the scaffold go, the scaffold isn't mandatory. So, the same way that each body is different and it's a different set of scaffolding elements from an asana, every team and every organization is different and need a different set of practices and structures as scaffolds toward agility. For example, in the picture that you're seeing, this is also an asana about balance. And the scaffolding structure here would be to have a belt around my left leg so that I don't have to hold the leg up and I can think only about the balance. I'm not using it there because I don't need to. So the scaffold, again, isn't mandatory. And of course, and I'm going to give you some examples about agility. For example, in Scrum, the Scrum Master is there to help a team embrace agile values and deliver value according to business objectives. It isn't mandatory for a team to have a Scrum Master full-time if they have achieved a high level of agility. Even more, and I'm going to be a little bit more extreme here, The product owner is there to help the team prioritize items in the product backlog to maximize return of investment. And if the team has the ability to do that for themselves, you don't need a product owner, as a role. Yes. By now, you probably figured out that I consider every practice, every framework, every role, and every structure as a scaffold, and that I recommend using it while it works or helps, because not being able to let it go when you should creates a new set of rigid behaviors, very similar to the ones that you were trying to get rid of, and that doesn't get us near organizational agility at all. Okay, so my next insight is about breathing. That involuntary process, is it? So one thing that happens in yoga and other activities such as dancing and singing is that breathing is the key to everything. And we need to become totally aware of that natural involuntary process that keeps us alive, by the way. It needs to become voluntary, and we need to use it for the purpose of the practice. In organizations, that breathing process are all of the behaviors that are motivated either for explicit company rules or for unspoken agreements. Those rules and agreements are scaffolds, or sometimes they are rigid columns and rigid walls that keep the organization in the place that it is today. So it is very important to discover what are the ones that we need to keep and what are the ones that we need to change in order to gain flexibility. And for that, it is really important to meditate and to keep the noise as far away as possible, to always have in mind what's really important. I remember a few years ago, it was pre-pandemic, I was helping a team as a Scrum Master, and Scrum events were physically at the office. And some team members were struggling, and I didn't know why. And they didn't want to confess that I was setting events on their home office day. And 2 months have gone by without them being able to take the advantage of what they consider a great benefit, stay at home once a week. So once I was aware of that benefit, we created a schedule together. And if someone needed to stay home eventually in another day, we agreed on doing hybrid meetings. And I can totally assure you that it changed the mood of the team completely. Because what's important is not to do Scrum events or whatever practice. What's important is to help the team collaborate towards the business objective. And that's what we have to have in mind all the time, and not try to force practices, because the practices are important. Okay, so my last insight is to lift the heart up. I found that the practice of yoga, dancing, and singing are full of metaphors. And I love this one about lifting the heart up. So what it means in the practice is that you have to pull your breastbone out, letting your back stretch a little bit more, even when you feel that it's not possible. And you know, I'm seeing the picture that's from one of our practices, and I can hear Lula saying, "Your back looks beautiful," over Zoom. And what I actually feel is that my body is integrated, consolidated, like homogeneous. And I can assure you that feeling integrated feels awesome. People are the living heart of organizations. And I wonder when we've lost our way and forgotten about that. I wonder how we can think that 20% of 5 people make up for a whole person dedicated to an objective. But we have these conversations in organizations all the time. We put together jigsaw puzzles made of pieces of people most of the time without even asking. Lifting the heart of your organization up implies that you really have to put people in the center. And I mean really, and I can stress that enough. It's not something you say, it's something that you actually do. Um, and that means not doing anything for people without people. And seeing organizational change through the glass of scaffolding structure allows people to do some experiment designs by themselves, for themselves, and being able to test the experiment and see how it works, how it fits, to consider changes as temporary so that the organization can evolve without hurting its heart. Okay, to sum up, if you want nothing to change, you have to stop moving. In today's organizations, it means disappearing. The world outside is changing exponentially. And I think developing organizational agility is our best shot to survive. So I hope you give this scaffolding approach a try and reach out to me with your insights. You have there on the deck my Instagram, my LinkedIn, my Twitter, and of course, if you like to read me out, you have my Medium account. So thank you so much for listening.
We have lived up to the Agile principle about building projects around motivated individuals by giving them the environment and support they need. It was a pleasure to be your host for the Agile Next 2021 conference. This conference was conceptualized and brought to you by a group of enthusiasts with a vision. Before we close for today, I would like to thank all the speakers, panelists, and attendees for your gracious presence and valuable contributions. I would also like to take this opportunity to show our gratitude to the team for their selfless contribution towards making Agile Next 2021 a grand success. Thank you once again and have a wonderful evening.